Welcome to Teatime on Tatooine, bringing fans together from galaxies far, far away. I'm your host, Anna Trumbo. The Acolyte. You loved it. You hated it. If you're a listener of the podcast, you most likely have watched it and have a strong opinion one way or another. But this episode isn't necessarily to review or critique The Acolyte. My husband and I did that already, if you want to check out those episode reviews. No, my aim here is to take a step back and look at the larger picture. How does the Acolyte serve the origins of the Skywalker saga? We know that there is a direct line from Darth Plagueis to Anakin Skywalker, but we don't know much beyond that. When does it start? What mysteries did Plagueis learn, and from whom? Did he and Palpatine create Anakin? And if so, did they do it on purpose? How did Darth Plagueis the Wise meet his tragic demise? I've invited my friend and fellow podcast host Brian Hastert to return to the Darth Jar Jar studio to dive into Acolyte and how it relates to the canon timeline that connects the High Republic to the prequel era. These time periods have been explored and fleshed out at length, and now it's time to start to see some of these stories weave together as the grand designs of the Sith begin to take shape. Hello.
Hi.
You got your coffee?
Right here.
We're going to pretend it's tea.
Yeah, this is tea.
To keep it on brand.
Oh, I have a little fan going. Can you hear a little hum in the background? Does it matter?
I cannot.
Okay, great. We'll keep it.
No, so your mic is doing its job.
Sweet.
Yeah, excellent. So you're my first repeat guest.
Oh my God, I'm honored.
It's very exciting.
Okay.
Before we jump into this week's theme, I did want to ask for an update on your viewing of Bad Batch, because last time you were here, we talked a lot about the clones, and you said you were going to watch, and I know you have been watching, so I want to catch up on that.
I finished it last night. I blazed through the third season in like
Wow.
2 days.
Yeah, you did.
I just put it on while I was folding laundry or doing other stuff, and so it was good. I liked it a lot. I had to do some Googling at the end though, because I'm like, well, I don't want to spoil anything, but you can.
It's fine.
Okay, fine. So I was like, so is Omega a Force user? Is she going to be a Jedi? Like, they kind of drop in this thing that they build over the course of several episodes, but then they're like, nah, we're not going to touch that again. So it makes me feel like, okay, so are they going to introduce her in? Does she live on into future projects? Are they going to do some other pre A New Hope thing with her? Because I'm like, okay, it seems like we set her up as a clone who can use the Force.
Yes, it's a little tricky, and I've been doing some research and I'm getting like different answers, and I think part of it's because there's some canon information and some legends information, and the canon information seems to be incomplete, and it's kind of unclear like where they're going to go with it. But I don't think having a high M count equates with the ability to use the Force.
Right. It seems like it's Force sensitivity rather than Force usage.
Yes. And part of that, I think, explains like why she's really good at communicating with animals and communicating with people who don't speak the same language as her. Like in season 2, she makes friends with that Wookiee Jedi, and they're communicating fairly successfully and do not speak the same language. Right.
So, but she is a character. I loved her, like outside of her Force sensitivity or ability to use, because any character that's like just a really earnest, I want to do the right thing and I'm gonna do it even if it's very hard or costs me a lot. The Billy Crudup's character in Princess Mononoke is like that for me. I've got to go do this, and this is gonna be hard. So I loved her as a character, and the clones, like her, the rest of the clones, I should say. As far as like our last conversation, I really enjoyed how they had such different opinions about stuff. Like I really enjoyed watching them have to go on their different journeys, and also at one point somebody says, I think it's Hemlock, which is what a great name for a villain. He's like
so great.
The biggest, the biggest problem with the clones is your loyalty. And I was like, of course their loyalty is like bred in, right? Because it's like, I got to look after me. I got to take care of number one. There just happens to be a few million number one.
Yep. Exactly. That was such a good performance by Jimmy Simpson too.
Yeah. Yeah. He did great.
Wow.
Yeah.
Just wow.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I completely agree. And I told you Crosshair had a really great arc.
What an arc. What a journey.
What an arc. And he's all ready to. And I really saw this coming and was like, oh, yeah, he's going to make the hero's sacrifice and the redemptive. But I like that they went a different direction. They were like, no, she needs you too.
Yeah.
Like, we go in together or not at all. Like, this is,
It was really touching. And honestly, and I know last time I talked to you, I just finished season 2, and I was like, I can't believe Tech died. I was like, I don't know that I trust that he's dead. I think that because in this universe, obviously no one is dead until proven dead, and then even then maybe they'll come back. But I think he actually died, and it was so.
I think so too.
It didn't really hit until the end of the series because I think a lot of people probably watched to that same sense of he'll come back.
Well, and a lot of people thought that he might be one of the clone commandos, the masked clone. I mean, not masked; they're helmeted, but those.
Oh, at the
super
end,
clones.
those operatives. Oh my god.
Yeah, well, and you see the one who's kind of stalking them throughout and ends up actually capturing her at the end of season 2, or not the end of season 2, halfway through season 3 when she's on the island, and there were people that were like, "Oh yeah, that was probably Tech," and I went, maybe. But I really hope not.
I think he just died.
There's too much heartbreak in this. I know. I would be so much. It would be so much sadder if it was actually him. But and this will actually tie into something I think we're going to touch on a little later.
Yes.
But I was thinking very hard about how are they going to rescue her from Mount Tantus in the beginning of season 3. And it never occurred to me, and it should have, that she would just break herself out.
Right. Me too. Yeah. I was like,
and I was kicking myself because I was like, of course she's going to break herself out. She's not a wait around kind of person. She's incredibly resourceful. She now has all of this training by an ARC trooper and special clone forces. Of course she's going to get herself out.
Not only is she trained, deeply, thoroughly trained by these special forces, but she's also got the exact same genetic makeup that make them such badasses. She's just small. As she reminds you occasionally during the series, she's older than them.
Yes. She's like, little brother.
Yeah.
Remember? And that kind of goes back to what we were talking about before in the last episode, because none of them have the perceived maturity level of a 10, 11, or 12-year-old.
Right. Yeah. Which still, it makes me wonder, okay, this is something I was thinking about throughout. Okay. So, right, the brain fully matures, they say, at 25 or something, or maybe a little later for some people like us. But, so it's a physical development that allows your brain to fully mature, which allows your behavior to kind of settle. But, so do the clones get the advantage of that happening more rapidly? They can obviously only learn so many skills in so much time, just like anybody else. And
have so many experiences.
Yeah.
But no, I think absolutely, because otherwise we would see a bunch of, at this point, Omega's probably 15 by the time it all is over. So they would all be about 30. But at no point do we see a fully grown clone acting like an adolescent or pre-adolescent.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that's very fair. Crosshair is somehow grizzled at the ripe old age of 13, 14, 15. So,
yeah, he's seen a lot, to be fair.
He has seen a lot of shit.
Yeah.
And have you watched Game of Thrones?
Mm-hmm.
He gets Jaime Lannistered. That was so shocking.
Yeah. Well, that was such an interesting thing to do to him, because that was the only time where you see a vindictive, they're usually just trying to kill or stun each other, but you don't see this kind of vindictive mutilation happening on behind. None of the soldiers do that. None of the clones do that. That's the only time you really see that. And it's the other sniper, the evil, it's the evil sniper version, the Crosshair if he had gone over kind of thing. So there's a weird rivalry there, but also I feel in taking away his shooting hand, that was also like where all of his trauma was manifesting. It was like weirdly the only thing that maybe allowed him to be free of the whole situation afterwards.
Yes. Well, and we know cybernetics at this point are pretty advanced because Anakin lost like 2/3 of his arm in Attack of the Clones, and
yeah, he's fine.
Seemed to have absolutely no problem wielding a lightsaber with deft.
Right. Well, and they're so advanced that they're like replaceable. You know, like Echo, when he's stalking through Tantus, he just grabs a droid's hand. He's like, this will work just fine. Now I can open it and close it and use it, and it's no big deal. So I think if he wants another hand, he's going to have another hand, you know.
He's going to be fine. But yeah, I completely agree because he's got all the kind of shaking and tremors throughout the season, and that probably goes away after he, yeah.
I hope so.
Anyway.
I hope the best for him, for all of them.
But I'm trying to think of like a good segue to bring it to what I want to talk about today.
Okay, let's brainstorm. Here we go. We got this.
I can't. Yeah. The clones are something.
Well, you know, okay. So how about this? The clones were all genetically created from the same human being. They were like made in this super hyper technical way, life created from life. Whereas what we're going to be talking about today is the exact opposite way to bring people into existence. By
somehow creating them in the Force, from the Force.
Not from other people, not the old-fashioned, you know, procreative way, not the new-fashioned technological genetic cloning way. I don't know if it's older or newer or what.
Yep. My guest on episode 5, I think, yes. One of my guests on episode 5 has a very strong opinion about midichlorians. And
what's his opinion?
If I say mitochondria, you have to correct me because I sometimes will mess them up. But the midichlorians,
I refuse to correct you. I accept that.
All right, perfect. We will. This is the disclaimer that if I say mitochondria, I mean midichlorians. So just go with it. His whole thing is we don't want to know how the Force works.
That's exactly right. I felt the exact same way.
The Force is mystical. It's this whole thing. When Qui-Gon measures Anakin's M count and says it's higher than Yoda's, it's like no, I don't want to know that. I don't want to know the science behind it. Like it's supposed to just be mystical. And
yes,
as we find out later, it is still very mystical and unknowable, but there are ways in which you can kind of measure it, I guess. And I agreed with him for quite a long time. I was like, who gives a shit about midichlorians? It's dumb. No one cares. I feel like I've kind of come back around to that being interesting.
Whoa.
Because I think...
What an arc you had.
I know. But because my guess is that the way that Mother Anastasia was able to create the twins was by manipulating and shaping and molding midichlorians into the creation of life.
I mean, it's like any sciencey thing, sure. So now we understand molecules and atoms. Okay, great. So now we understand atoms. Do we understand the universe? No, we still don't understand the universe. Okay, so now we understand atoms have subatomic particles, protons, electrons. Okay, now they're even smaller than that, quarks and muons and stuff. Okay, do we understand the universe? No, we don't. So sure, there are midichlorians. There's a sciencey, measurable aspect to the Force, at least as manifest in the human relationship or the being relationship to this Force, right? Does that actually help us understand what it is? No, it's like our sad way to try to grapple with the unknowable.
It's a good point.
I think what you're saying is like you've learned enough to actually give back into the mystery of it.
Yes, I think that's accurate. The other part of that, and I'm going to bring this up multiple times during this recording, is the book Darth Plagueis, which is now no longer canon because I think it came out like right before the Disney acquisition.
Whoa! Hold it up again. look how thick that fucking book is. I had no idea it was that thick of a book.
And it's dense. It's
Jesus.
I know. It's small, little font.
It's like a reference
thin
book.
pages. It's like a reference book. It's very full of the arcane and stuff. And I figured going into this, I was like, oh, I'm definitely going to need Wikipedia open next to this to go and kind of go, oh, what is this species and what is that again? What I did not anticipate and was equally relevant is I needed to have a fucking dictionary open. And I pride myself on having an excellent vocabulary. Private school education, not a measure of intelligence, but I really like big words. I love crosswords. I'm very into words. There were so many just regular old English language words that I did not know in this book.
Not like special Star Wars words, like just regular.
No, just regular words, just describing like he walked down the aisle with the air of blah, blah, blah. And like what the, so I think at some point I'll probably do like a little insert and do a list of some of the insane words in this book that I just did not know.
Oh my God, please. I can't wait to learn the special Plagueis vocabulary I need.
Yeah, that's really just English.
Right.
So it's interesting because his whole thing in canon, and I'm going to try and keep it there.
Ooh.
I'm going to repeat myself because that's going to make a noise. In canon, and I'm going to try and keep it there just because anything new that comes out is going to be in the Disney canon. So it doesn't really make sense to get too into that. But in canon, the only real explanation of Plagueis is when Palpatine takes Anakin to the opera. Did you ever hear the tale of Darth Plagueis the Wise? He was able to, keep people from dying. And then he was killed by his apprentice. That's it.
Right.
And then in the Acolyte, we see him peeking out from a cave.
And I believe, because he doesn't have like a tattoo on his head that says, I am Darth Plagueis, but I believe the reason we know it's him is because the showrunner, Leslie Headland, confirmed that it's him. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
There's still people fighting about whether or not Chimere was a Sith, and Manny Jacinto has in interviews
referred to him
confirmed.
As a Sith.
Yeah. Because he has that line, I have no name. You might call me a Sith.
The Jedi would call me a Sith.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like that means he's a Sith.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
That's what I took it as. Although it could be that weird Sith doublespeak, but I just was like, okay, so
yeah.
For all intents and purposes,
Yeah, I don't think they'd go out in interviews and refer to him as a Sith if he wasn't a Sith. And we know for a fact that Darth Plagueis is a Sith because he has the title of Darth, and he is there. Now the question, one of many, is does Chimere know that Plagueis is on the island? Does he know he's being observed? Is he Chimere's apprentice? And does he know that his master is there watching all of this? Is he assisting his master in conducting this experiment with these twins?
Is Chimere Plagueis' apprentice?
Yes, exactly.
Not the other way around, right? Yeah.
No, definitely not the other way around. Well, I mean, I don't know, maybe, but
probably not.
I would say highly likely not.
Right.
But is he part of Plagueis's game in that he doesn't know he's part of the game, or does he know he's part of, is he?
Well, he does refer to having a master. He talks about having someone that he is also serving. So
yes,
it would track that would be him. Otherwise, it would be weird to introduce Darth Plagueis and then have some other master that's out there for Chimere.
However, what if Plagueis is his master, but he still doesn't know he's on the island? Plagueis is somewhere else, as far as Chimere's aware.
Right, yeah.
Chimere's trying to get his own apprentice to do the classic Sith thing of, I'm the apprentice, I'm going to have my own apprentice, and I'm going to overthrow my master, which is kind of the pattern that's repeated for a long-ass time. Does he know that Plagueis is there watching him?
Uh, yeah, I don't think this series takes a stand on that, and I don't know. It could be either way. I
I'm
could see
sure
it either
we'll
way.
find out.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we'll either find out or we won't, and that'll be fine. But I am curious about that because his whole thing, and we can infer this from canon even without getting too much into this book, but his whole thing is keeping people from dying.
Right.
So part of that is the manipulation of midichlorians, not mitochondria. I had to think about that real quick.
Maybe both, honestly. I mean,
Maybe both.
They're
We
both
don't
responsible
know
for life in a certain way.
in a certain way, but manipulating midichlorians to keep people alive, I mean, it's all kind of linked. So it would make sense that he would have a especially strong interest in the twins.
It's so interesting. I hadn't thought of this until just now, but usually preserving and prolonging life is something you assign to the good guys as like a quality. Why is it so bad when he wants to do it?
I don't know if that's the bad thing.
Oh, I see. Okay, he's got other bad stuff.
Yeah, no, he's got other bad stuff. But yeah, I guess you could make an argument like it's vanity and that going back to join the Force by dying is an honor and a beautiful thing, and it's why you shouldn't mourn when people die.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But,
yeah.
So maybe, but I didn't think of that as being why he's bad or necessarily a bad attribute about him. But it did occur to me that this is another canon thing. Venestra, the green Jedi Master woman who orchestrates the cover-up, she is very old, like well over 100 years old. And
she looks great.
She looks great. I would love to know her skincare routine. I would assume her species just has a longer lifespan than your human lifespan. But she, about 100 years ago, had a Padawan called Imri, which interestingly enough has the same letters as Chimere, but
Minus
just
the
add
Q.
a Q and shuffle a couple of them around. And he had a different master. His master was killed. He freaked out and was just about to do full-on revenge on these people that killed his master. Venestra kind of stopped him from committing a dark side act, basically. She took him on as her Padawan. He was pretty great. He was on this giant space station when it went down and crashed into the ocean of a planet. There were many, many people on that space station, all presumed dead. I don't think all the bodies were recovered from the wreckage. And as we've mentioned before, unless it's proven that someone's dead, they may not be dead. Right. So a lot of people, myself included, and I've actually thought this for a few episodes, not before the end of the series, I thought it might be Imri. But I think it's him. I think because it's her former Padawan, she has now confirmed. But
everybody recognizes him. But also the nice dude who's kind of a stick in the mud, who's a Jedi Master who gets killed in the same episode that the other.
Yord.
Yord, yeah. He also recognizes him. Is he also 80 years old? How old are these young-looking people?
He recognizes him from the apothecary.
From the apothecary?
Yeah, from the potion shop on that planet, because he's...
Oh, he recognizes him from the potion shop, right?
Yeah, that's where they recognize him.
Duh, because he saw him there and wasn't like, you are an old Padawan to Venestra. Okay, yeah.
I think he was just like, oh, you're that guy that we didn't...
Yeah, didn't take seriously. Yeah.
Didn't take seriously. And that's something that is interesting and is brought up in the Darth Plagueis book that I would assume translates to canon, is that one of the Sith traits or Sith skills that is taught from master to apprentice and so on and so forth is to cloak your presence in the Force.
Right.
From other Force users.
Right.
And to root yourself in the root yourself in the physical world in a way that makes it so like you could be having conversation. You could be standing in the middle of the Jedi Council. They would have no idea that you had any sort of special imprint in the Force. So that would make sense that he has that. But all of this is to go back and say Venestra might not be a human. He is a human. If he is Venestra's apprentice from 100 years ago, then that would make him like 130, 100 and however old years old.
Oh, he is a human. So he doesn't just look like a handsome dude. He is a handsome human dude. That's what he is.
He is a handsome human dude, which would track with him being Darth Plagueis' apprentice, because Plagueis is able to extend his own life. Therefore, it would stand to reason he can extend the age and vitality of his apprentice. So that's what I'm thinking. Yes.
I'm also, I feel like what the Acolyte is doing that's fun for me, and apparently really existentially challenging for a lot of dudes on the internet is it's toying with the notion of like what is a just use of the Force, and what is like what does goodness mean? What is like where are the rules around morality in the Force user universe? And it's like we were saying a minute ago. If Darth Plagueis wants to like prolong and extend life, is that necessarily bad? Well, no, he's got other qualities, but in some ways, what's his name? Palpatine, Darth Sidious. Is that his? Yeah. I mean, is it bad to want to run an organized government? Well, not in and of itself, but the way he does it is bad. It's bad, I think.
He wants to be a dictator.
Yeah. Which it should get, like that's the bad version of it. But, having a tight bureaucracy isn't necessarily evil. It's just the Sith version of it sort of is.
Correct.
And also, I think, like, what's Darth Plagueis's, Clark Kent? Like, what's his, like, because everybody seems to have, like, this alter ego or, like, this person they were before that interacts with the human world, where the Jedi are like the Jedi. Like, they're monks. Their identity is religious monk. Whereas I feel like the Sith are also officers in an army, or, or they're politicians, or they're whatever. Like, they're also, like, it's the Jedi who are like the Sith are evil. And everybody else is like, I don't know that they're evil. They're powerful. They're good at stuff. I mean, maybe I agree with them. Maybe I don't. But, like the population at large doesn't seem to regard the Sith, which is with as much terror or revilement or mistrust as specifically the Jedi do.
I think, well, there's also, I mean, when he kind of pseudo vaguely refers to himself as a Sith, or reveals himself as a Sith in the woods, he says, because I exist, I have to kill you.
Right.
And my friend, actually, I can't take credit for this. My friend brought it up, but because people were like, why is he able to defeat so many Jedi Masters so easily? And he said it would be like the equivalent of a modern day human walking down the street and seeing a straight up knight, like Arthurian knight, walking down the street, like something from 1,000. I don't know the timeline. I don't know when King Arthur was. It wasn't 1,000 years ago, but someone from 1,000 years ago that we know from history books, but seeing them in modern day, just like it wouldn't compute to you because it's
the Jedi believed the Sith had been vanquished or were
gone, absolutely gone. So I guess, and again, I don't know if this is going to translate to canon or not, but there were thousands and thousands of Sith. There was a Sith Lord called Darth Bane that implemented the rule of two, which I think might have been like an ancient thing that he brought back. But part of it was that they could stay in hiding by only having a master and an apprentice. It's easier to stay hidden. That's it. So they're able to continue that unbroken line of Sith, master to apprentice and so forth for 1,000 years and stay completely unknown. So a lot of these Jedi that were in the forest are like, I maybe read a thing in a history in the archives about a Sith once, maybe.
I mean,
They don't have the context for it.
You know, that makes me wonder. I feel like Darth Bane might have really royally screwed up because, you know, you can look at it like he was playing the long game, but if it takes 1,000 fucking years for your long game to pay off, like, was it the long game, or did you just make a mistake that set you back literally one full millennium until somebody was like smart and good enough to bring your team back from the brink of absolute total irrelevance and destruction?
Yeah, that is one argument. Another argument would be the Force is all about balance, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think the dark side users get that more than the light side users.
Mm-hmm.
Because if there's a huge light side thing that happens, a dark side thing will happen as well. Like the Force is going to balance itself out no matter what. So for the Sith, making themselves smaller and hidden for so many years, it's almost like building up to them being able to have a huge victory over the light, because the light has been dominant for so long that they're just now like waiting for their time to.
You know, I heard something recently. Where did I see this? I thought it was so interesting and smart. But like, anytime you are victorious, you're also, anytime your team or a team is victorious, they're also sowing the seeds for their own defeat eventually in the future. Like, because there is no such thing as a permanent victory. That's just not how anything works. So the Force is just a beautiful cosmic metaphor for that notion. But also, I don't know that the Sith are necessarily more in touch with the sense of balance. I think they want to tilt it to the dark side just the same way the Jedi want to tilt it to the light side. If anybody, here's a potential transition. If anybody in the Star Wars universe seems to actually be practicing some sense of balance, I think it might be those witches.
It's a very good point. I don't know if the dark side users value the balance necessarily more, but I think from an academic standpoint, they understand it. Like they understand that after so many years of Jedi supremacy,
that's their turn.
They're primed to fall.
Yeah.
They know that it's a ripe time. And I don't think as many Jedi understand that or realize how imminent their ultimate defeat is because of that.
Yeah,
possibly.
I feel like the wise ones get it, you know.
Palpatine for sure got it.
Well, Palpatine does, but I feel like even like Yoda's like, well, the Jedi's we're done now. Like we had a good run, guys, but like it's sort of what's happening, you know.
Yeah, well, because Palpatine could have, once he found out that, you know, the chosen one, Anakin, may have been found, I should just kill him. Mm-hmm. But I think in his mind, he knows if he kills someone so powerful in the Force, who's currently very strongly in the light side will balance it out and just bring something else to power. So in his mind, he's like, well, if I corrupt that and bring that over, that's a whole other thing. Mm-hmm. But then the Force balances itself out by bringing Leia and Luke into the world, who are both strong in the light side. So it's, yeah, like you said, there's never a permanent victory. It's always, it's going to balance itself out.
Well, I love the idea that, you know, I don't know if we were talking about this before. I was definitely reading up on this a little bit in my my research for today. But the idea that if Anakin was, some people thought he was the chosen one, right? If Palpatine thought that, if some people thought he was like the chosen one, for reasons we can get into. I love the idea that, you know, in our world, the chosen one is a good thing. And in this world, we don't know what he's chosen for necessarily, right? It could be like, you know, Gozor the Destructor, like chosen to bring doom and destruction, like choose the form of the conqueror, you know, like it could be, like, and Palpatine's like, okay, so he's chosen, he's very powerful, but we can aim that power, we can have, you know, like we still have some agency to like create and manifest what this power is going to serve, you know. It's going to have an arc over time.
Yeah. I mean, I think his ultimate destiny was clear. The chosen one is supposed to bring balance to the Force. Mm-hmm. However, all the Jedi, for some reason, were like, yeah, he's going to bring balance to the Force, and we are currently very much in power, and that's not alarming at all.
Right.
And Obi-Wan at the end is like, you were supposed to bring balance in the Force, not cast it into darkness. And ironically, he did bring balance to the Force. He wiped out a ton of Jedi because the Force was out of balance. There were only 2 dark side users, or 3, like not many Sith people, and hundreds and thousands of Jedi. So he brought balance to the Force by wiping out the Jedi.
Yeah, the Jedi had gotten too strong and needed to be
so he
culled.
did, you know, meet his mandate, whatever. I don't know how I'm phrasing that, but he did do what he was supposed to.
He met the quota he was hired for.
He meant, bring balance to the Force, and he did, just not in the way that the Jedi would have hoped that he would. But because he wiped out all the Jedi, things were balanced out by him having his offspring be these 2 light side users, and then Luke ends up bringing balance in his own way. So it's all, and you could also argue that Anakin, in redeeming himself at the end of Return of the Jedi and casting the Empire down, was bringing balance in his own way again. So
right,
it's a lot.
Yeah, except that Palpatine didn't die when he
didn't.
Well, all right. Well, that's another story for another time, perhaps. Yeah,
it's another story for another time. Somehow, Palpatine is alive. Just well, but I do like. I really like what Leslie Headland has done with the story. I know a lot of people on the internet don't. I will say I myself was a slow convert. I didn't really understand a lot of the stuff going in, and was like, why are they making these decisions? And then I realized I'm being an impatient viewer and not realizing that episodic storytelling takes time, and sometimes things are revealed later, but I, in my impatience, wanted things to be revealed now. I really like what she did. I hope she gets more of an opportunity to, because she has said that she, in her mind, has a through line from the Acolyte to Palpatine and Anakin.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
And I don't know if it's for sure that she's going to get an opportunity to tell more of the story. I hope she does.
They haven't confirmed a season 2 yet.
Yeah, well, and if they do a season 2, will they give it to her? Will they give it to someone else?
It blew my mind because I feel like not only did I enjoy it and find it really just excellent storytelling in a bunch of ways, also it was really popular. It was like massively popular.
Yes. I don't think I've ever heard a show get so much hate. Anything in Star Wars get so much hate, though.
Oh, I feel like the last few Star Wars movies. I mean, I feel like the last 6 Star Wars movies all got a lot of hate when they came out.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, I feel like the last 7 did. I feel like the only 2 that didn't get a lot of hate were what we now call A New Hope, which was just Star Wars when it came out, and then Empire Strikes Back. Those are the only 2. I feel like when Return of the Jedi came out, people were like, this is cool. What? These Ewoks? What is this? This is stupid. And I feel like when the prequels came out, people were like, garbage. This is, what is this? This is stupid. And I feel like aside from Andor and Rogue One, I feel like basically everything else has had such strong hater class. But I also, I think now it depends on which corner of, social media you occupy as to which voices you hear.
Very true. It does bother me, sort of this like erasure of prequel hate that's happening on the internet now, because someone that I follow, like a Star Wars fan account, posted a little montage of all 9 of the Skywalker saga movies, and it was honestly just like a fan post that was like, oh, so great, that's it, just love it. And no joke, the first over 10 of the top first comments were, yeah, I don't know why those last 3 are on there. Yeah, 1 through 6, 7 through 9 don't exist. Just see, like, sequels don't exist, sequels don't count, sequels suck. The top 10 comments or more, like 10 to 15 comments. And all I'm thinking is, did you forget how much people hated the prequels?
People
there's all this
hated
like,
them.
and there's all this prequel love now, and it's like, did you? I mean, maybe it's younger people that never had a chance to hate the prequels, and I have grown to appreciate the prequels the older I've gotten. I will be the first to say, though, that I did not like them for a long time.
Yeah.
I'm not going to change that history of my own
You're
opinion.
in good company. I think there's something to the fact of just like if it lasts long enough and it becomes like when people are like, oh, it's canon, oh, it's canon. Canon is a movable feast. Do you know what I mean? Like
100%. It was canon that Palpatine was dead, and then it was canon that he wasn't dead.
And people will argue about it, and as long as they can claim that they're right about something. And so I feel like it's only a matter of time before the, episodes 7, 8, and 9 are grandfathered into the nostalgia clause, and people
yes,
are like,
well, no,
7, 8, and 9
agree.
are amazing. The first 9 movies are great. It's the 17th, 18th, and 19th movies. Those are the ones that are garbage. It's the new ones. The old ones are perfect.
I completely agree. There's going to be a retconning of people's opinions and.
Yeah,
and
it's so fun.
I have my problems with the sequels for sure. I have a lot of problems with the sequels, but it's still entertaining. It's still Star Wars.
The Star Wars Christmas special was garbage when it came out, and people love it now.
Really? It's still garbage.
Nobody thinks it's not garbage, but people love it as opposed to being a little offended by it when it first happened. Now it's like such a weird collector's item. Do you know what I mean? Like people,
I guess so,
have a very soft spot for it.
I guess so. I don't know.
You don't have to love it, but it's got the weird cult, devotion.
Yes, this is true. I have to digest that. So this might be a good time to take a little bit of a break. We'll be back with more Tea Time on Tatooine. Breathe in hate. Breathe out compassion. Breathe in freedom. Breathe out restriction. Breathe in darkness. Breathe out light. Here at Spa of the Sith, we know that Sith Lords and their apprentices need to relax and unwind, just like everyone else. Treatments include sinister plotting, bathing in the blood of your enemies, hunting sentient species, ritual sacrifice, scream meditation, and so much more. Our staff is at your disposal for you to practice force choking, force lightning, dismemberment, and torture via forced hallucination. We'll add an expiration fee to your final bill for each person you kill. We're located on the unknown planet. Just plug in your Sith Wayfinder, and you'll be on your way. No reservations required. Spa of the Sith. Ultimate power never felt so good. Welcome back to Tea Time on Tatooine. We have refreshed our tea and coffee respectively.
Oh no, it's tea. It's an amazing Earl Grey.
Oh, okay, got it for sure. One thing I referenced earlier that I did want to bring up was when so you shot me a text and you said something. Actually, I'm going to look it up.
Quote it accurately because I'm sure it was perfectly phrased.
Yes. Okay. You texted me and said, you're probably at work right now, but if not, call me and explain who Darth Plagueis is, because I started to look it up, but it wasn't going well and you will make it fun. And I just immediately called you, and I was at work, but I stepped outside. I was like, well, and I think I truly did have like 5 minutes before a meeting, but at that point, I didn't know a ton. I hadn't read the book, which again doesn't count really at this point. But we did talk a little bit about Acolyte on that phone call. And I brought up something along the lines of, like, you know, Darth Plagueis probably taught the witches how to do this thing, and now he's observing his experiment as it progresses and ages, with, you know, the creation of the twins. And you said something different.
I think I said, well, what if he's actually learning from them? Like he's finding people who use the Force outside of the concepts of Jedi or Sith and have figured out things that he has no idea about, and it's just going to steal their secrets.
And that would be much more subversive.
It would be. I think so. You know, there's something about the Star Wars universe that is so polar, right? It's the Jedi or the Sith. That's it. That's what you got. And I feel like, you know, I know some of the writers on the Acolyte, and they're really smart. They're incredibly smart, incredibly feisty writers. And I think the idea that there are clans of witches out there that are actually doing the craziest, coolest, most insane and powerful magic with the Force out there, that would be not a violation of Star Wars rules, but a brilliant expansion of what we conceive of as the Star Wars universe.
Yep. And my response mentally was, you're a better feminist than I am. Of course, the Coven of Witches has a brilliant male behind them pulling the strings and manipulating all of these things. And then you're like, well, no, how about this other thing that actually narratively kind of makes more sense? I'm like, oh, God damn it. I'm too programmed to think in a certain way.
You know, it's not just the Star Wars universe that has programmed you. You know, the Star Wars universe and lots of universes have programmed you to think it must be a charismatic male figure that is pulling the strings here.
Movies and books forever, for eternity.
You know, and it might be. That could totally be what it is. I just feel like that when I think of who these writers are and how smart they are, I imagine a world where they could definitely have conceived of this other thing that, you know, I'm not sure I would have been bright enough to think of, but when I watch it through what I imagine their minds are, you know, or how they're working, that's what I imagine it might be.
Yes, I completely agree. I also like that they really turned the good and evil thing on its head, where the actions of the Sith are done out of self-preservation, and then when she ends up killing Saul, it's an act of passion, but it's not just abject cruelty. It's not the way we think of Sith as like senseless violence and just straight up evil. But there's this man that's been lying to her entire life, took her away from her family. She finds out, killed her family, or her mom at least, and was complicit in the murder of the rest of the coven. Murder is quote unquote. That's, I mean, and now he's talking to her and saying, I did what I thought was best for you. And she's like, shut the fuck up. And just, you know, has this really understandable reaction. Would we all react the same way? Probably not. But are we meant to empathize with the way she's feeling as she's force choking him? Absolutely. And the one person in that episode who I think inarguably does the shittiest stuff is Venestra, who I think in her mind, it's pretty clear, like, she's not acting out of the dark side. She is doing what she thinks is right to preserve the reputation and
the institution,
the institution of the Jedi Order, because that is what she thinks the galaxy needs. So in the interest of the greater good, she is throwing this man completely under the bus. She's covering up this entire thing, lying to everyone knowingly.
Well, she's doing a very Sith-like thing, which is she's weaving together truth and lies to create a narrative that really suits her specific purpose. Because the Sith aren't a fully destructive force. They're a constructive force. The Sith also build. The Empire is probably a greater feat of construction and building than the Republic was in some ways, but it's the values at play, right? In theory, the Jedi represent building something that can contain a plurality, multiple views and multiple kinds of people who think and feel multiple ways, and they're creating a space that is permissive and allowing, whereas the Empire is not. It's a giant, construction that is only permissive of fealty to the Emperor and loyalty along these certain lines. So different kinds of rules of engagement. But the Sith, in order to build something the scale of the Empire, have to have rules in there somewhere. And those rules can include a tremendous amount of violence and cruelty, of course, and the Jedi would not like that. But it's weird when she does something to preserve an institution, to build, this governing structure that she likes for Nestra, the Jedi Order, and the Republic, and all this, that she does what she feels she has to do, which is a lot of untruth.
Yep. And I, mentioned this in the kind of review that I did of the end of Acolyte, but there's that one senator that comes in that's like, well, no, you're a cult. You've been acting with impunity and operating with absolutely no oversight for centuries and enjoying the privilege of your autonomy underneath but outside of the Empire of Republic. Sorry. Mm-hmm. Not underneath the Republic, outside of the Republic. You're extra legal. Yeah, completely operating outside of the bounds of law. This has to stop. This is, enough is enough. And he just sums it up in like 20 seconds, completely nails it. But in Venestra, she truly believes, and it's not about self-preservation like of her or furthering her career necessarily, but she truly in her core believes that by whatever means necessary, the Jedi Order must prevail for the good of the galaxy. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Well, and it's easy to see why she believes that. She thinks that on balance, by and large, they do more good than harm. And then, but what I think the Acolyte does that's so subversive and cool to me is that it introduces the concept that there are other ways to use the Force outside of this polarity of Jedi or Sith. And that what the Jedi do is that they go find children who are able to tap into this power on their own and not abduct, because they do it with permission. They do it with consent, right? That's the idea, at least.
Yeah, but who's going to say no to them?
But they take these children and they indoctrinate them into a very specific view of how to use the power that they innately have. So they give them a lot of skill. They give them a lot of tools to wield this power, and they give them a philosophy with which to contain the use of this power, which I think, most of us would agree are pretty good ideas. But the Acolyte introduces this coven of witches, which introduces the idea that there probably are a lot more Force cults out there besides the Sith, the Jedi, and the witches. And the fact that the senator that you mentioned refers to the Jedi as a cult, a lot of viewers might be like, the senator's wrong. The Jedi aren't a cult. It's so much bigger and better than that. But it's the same thing of like looking at the big religions in our world, Christianity, Judaism, Islam, whatever the big ones, Hinduism, and saying, well, what's the difference between a religion and a cult? Number of followers? Is that age of institution? I don't know. Like Christianity was a cult and then it was a religion. So, is it a cult? Is it a some people call it a religion, some people whatever, in the Star Wars universe. But also I think that the idea that now we have other groups who have different relationships, not just with the Force, but other relationships to the concepts of dark and light, and don't necessarily view them as polar or in conflict with each other. The witches, to me, seem like they're pretty comfortable dancing across a line that the Jedi do not feel comfortable dancing across at all.
I think that's a very good point. We have, what are some of the other ones? We've met another coven, the Night Sisters, but they're much more kind of on the dark side of the spectrum.
Who are the Night Sisters? Where's that?
Do you know Ventress, the character? Oh yeah, you re-met her in Bad Batch.
Yeah, exactly.
She's from the Night Sister planet. I mean, they're on different planets, I guess, as well. But she's from the planet Dothamir, which is kind of steeped in dark side energy, and that's where her coven of witches is from. She just happens to be extra force sensitive and was taken by the Jedi as a child. Oh no, she wasn't. Never mind. I'm going to edit all of that out. What you've said, I completely agree. I think that's an argument for why the Jedi don't take older children, because it's harder to indoctrinate someone to say emotional attachment to another person is bad. When someone dies, you should rejoice in their rejoining the Force.
Right.
This is heavy indoctrination. And this is something that you see a lot of times with, very religious kids in real life. Like, oh, well, we should rejoice because they are in the kingdom of heaven. Like, it's not a sad thing that this person has died. But with Osha, she's experienced a major loss of people that she loves. With Anakin, he's experiencing the loss of his mother in a way. She's not dying at that time, but he's already experienced that emotional attachment to another person. And once I think you've experienced that, it's too hard to divorce yourself from that in your sense of core values. Well,
you can look at our world through history, and you have these different philosophies or movements that have sprung up to try to do, like the Stoics, like the Romans had, and maybe the Greeks had the Stoics, right? Which is like, you can't, you have to like separate yourself from your emotions because your emotions are irrational and they're going to cause you to do unhelpful, wrong, bad things in the world. So to separate yourself from your emotions. Well, the Stoics didn't last because that's not that's not sustainable, right? Our emotions are a part of us. And then you've got, Buddhists, which, I mean, I'm going to paraphrase this badly, but like the idea that suffering is caused by want and desire, and you can separate yourself from want and desire, and then you won't suffer as much or at all. You can achieve that sort of nirvana, right? But it's about separating yourself from these things that are these base desires, these things that make us very human. And if you can follow these philosophies, you get to a kind of enlightenment that is sort of scary to behold, because you're a little bit outside of the things that animate most people, which are a desire to help people, or, a desire, to be good in some ways. And it's sort of past that. I feel like our country, the United States of America, doesn't do this well, but it's sort of tried to premise itself, and it's not the first, but tried to premise itself on, okay, so human beings, we're not going to control emotions. We're going to create a system of laws, and the laws will be the accountability. So instead of saying like the old eye for an eye, like if somebody wrongs you, you can wrong them back in the exact same way, and then that's justice. We say, okay, so if somebody wrongs somebody else, the victim doesn't get to decide what the punishment is. That would lead to a never-ending series of blood feuds. So we will have a series of laws that will impose consequences that will keep some sort of order here, and the laws will be neutral. Well, of course, that's not how it's worked out. But, you create a system in place that doesn't ask people to do something that's not possible for people, which is suppress their feelings, emotions, and desires over time in order to become some kind of enlightened super being. And I feel like, I'm not sure that that's the way, obviously, but these things have been at war. And watch it, the Star Wars universe, one of the reasons it's so compelling to me is because it's like, okay, so we have these different, magical beings who can control magic, basically. Some of them give fully into their urges and instincts. Those are the Sith. Some of them try to stay cool and detached from those things and be at harmony with something larger than themselves. There seems to be something noble in that, but also something of denial at play there. And then you've got these other weird cults that are like, it's a little bit of both. It's just got to be a little bit of both.
That you still haven't seen Rebels, right? We've talked about it.
Still haven't seen Rebels, yeah.
Yeah, it's got to be on your list at some point.
All right,
but without really giving much away, because this is just a central kind of part of the plot. This kid, his name's Ezra. They find him when he's 15 years old. He's highly force sensitive. Turns out, becomes a Jedi. Like, is able to not just feel and perceive the force, but ultimately is a force wielder. But very force sensitive. This group of rebels comes across him. He's Space Aladdin, basically. He's stealing to eat, jumping from rooftop to rooftop, like highly acrobatic, kind of longish black hair. Mm-hmm. And he's trying to steal something to sell for money to eat because he's a street rat. Mm-hmm. And this group of rebels are trying to steal stuff to further their rebel cause. And they come into conflict. He ends up going with them kind of unwillingly. And then one of the rebels happens to be a Jedi in exile who was a Padawan, like a teenager during Order 66 and has been in hiding ever since. That person takes him on as an apprentice. His name is Kanan. Kanan's education in the Force was never completed. At this point, I think he's like close to 30 years old. He's never... He never passed the rank of Padawan because Order 66 happened. He ran away and survived. So a lot of this is him kind of making it up as he goes and just following his instincts. And a lot of what they say in Jedi doctrine is like, reach out with your feelings. And that's what he does. He reaches out with his feelings. He does what he feels is right. He trains Ezra. He has emotional attachments to people in his crew, the rebel crew. Mm-hmm. And that's what he teaches Ezra. And what we find is Anakin has these emotional attachments, but he is told not to. He is pushed so hard to not give into those attachments. And something that won't bend will break. And that's what happened with Anakin. With Ezra, his attachments to his chosen family, this crew of rebels, is his strength. And it's actually what pulls and keeps him out of the dark side and roots him in the light, is his love and loyalty for this family that he's built, which I think is so interesting. And it's really just like this is, in my mind, like the Jedi of the future. Jedi 2.0. They are allowed to have these emotional attachments. I'm sure there's still going to be some rules in the Order. And so I think that's part of what kind of bugged me a little bit with the sequels, is that they seemed to be, and it's unclear, we didn't really see what Luke was doing with his Jedi temple, but it seemed to be that he was just preaching the same doctrine that I guess you can't really know that for sure, but it's like, did they not learn from the mistakes that they made? Ezra had the same temptations as Anakin, but because he was gifted a more flexible framework within to work, within to operate, he was able to succeed and flourish in the light side, whereas Anakin,
right, to have an outlet
did
for
not.
that. I mean, there's something funny about the Jedi, because that idea that they believe the Force is about balance, but they themselves have to repress the entirety of the dark side, is like a contradiction, because if they think the universe has to have balance, but they themselves are only allowed to have one side of the Force, and that's complete lack of balance. It's total imbalance.
Completely.
There's also something funny about, just, like Western storytelling structure is, the way our stories work are underpinned by characters who want things, who want stuff. Protagonists want things, antagonists want things. That creates conflict when different characters have things that they want that they can't get because other characters or the world or whatever stands in their way, and that conflict propels action forward. And that's literally how Western storytelling structure works. There are other kinds of storytelling in the world, but that's how all of our movies and TV shows and all of our dramatic literature function. And anything we read that doesn't conform to that, we're like, nothing happens in this book. What am I reading here? It's like a treatise on nature. Like, this is boring. So narrative stories have that kind of thing, which means that we have been trained by our own storytelling to believe that characters who pursue strong wants are the best characters. They're the most compelling characters. They're the characters we feel and identify and emulate. For ourselves, like, oh, I want to be like that, because that's how we know to root for somebody, is when they want something and they go after it really strong. And I don't know if that is inherent in human nature or if we have told ourselves so many stories for so many centuries that it is such a deeply ingrained part of our culture that it's in our psyches in a way that is kind of irreversible, for now at least. Because maybe if we stop telling ourselves stories like that are so awesome and compelling, we'd have a chance to be like, oh, those characters who don't want anything, they're just like peaceful and at harmony with the universe. And then when it's time to die, they die or whatever. That is what I want to, I'm interested in that, in a way, the Kaminoans, I feel like, would make excellent Jedi because they seem so like weirdly detached
They're
about
so
stuff.
detached.
But like the idea of a Kaminoan Jedi feels weird because they are dispassionate. And you're like, well, I don't know. Like, maybe there aren't any. Maybe there were some and they're dead now. I don't know.
But that's the thing. The Jedi are forced to live in this continually opposing state of your compassion is an ally. You should always lean into your compassion. And you so many times you see it in Obi-Wan, you see it in Acolyte. Someone throws a knife at it's bartender. I guess bad guys don't like bartenders in Star Wars. And a Jedi either reveals himself, or in the case of Acolyte, like lets her guard down and gets knifed. Right. But that's their compassion. They can't help it. They can't help themselves. And Second Sister, whatever, she says the Jedi, or Grand Inquisitor says the Jedi hunt themselves. They can't help it. They cannot sit by and let an innocent person get hurt. It's just they can't do it. Yeah. Part of compassion is passion. Mm-hmm. That's right. And then in the same breath, they are told you can't, that compassion and feeling cannot extend to personal attachment.
Because the truly dispassionate
thing. How can you not do that?
Like, you're right. 2/3 of the syllables in compassion are passion. And if you try to take that out, if you're truly dispassionate, then when somebody throws a knife at the bartender, you're like, well, that's the way of the world. Like that.
It was the Force willed it.
The Force willed it. At a certain point, it's like, well, if I want to protect all life, I mean, again, I'm back to Darth Plagueis being like, yes, I also want to protect and extend all life, or life.
No, his life.
The power to be able to do that, and then
he wants to be the eternal and forever Sith master.
Right.
Yeah, it's a little more ego,
a little more
self-centered. Yeah. Yes, yeah. Exactly. He's I'm fascinated to see where they take all of this with. How does Plagueis fit into this narrative? Well, is he going to be? There's got to be either a season 2 or some sort of extension of this story. I mean, the story is not over. It's got a lot of places to go.
I mean, I hope Disney greenlights it.
I hope Disney greenlights it.
Yeah.
But like, I'm so curious to know what kind of a role he will play in the continuation of the storytelling. And I hope it's a central one because he's so interesting. And he does have a Clark Kent, to go back to an earlier thing. He has Sidious wasn't born Sidious. He was born Palpatine, Chief Palpatine. And Darth Vader wasn't born Darth Vader. He was born Anakin Skywalker. And Darth Plagueis wasn't born Darth Plagueis. His name is Hego Damask, or something like that. But he has an occupation. He has a persona. He has a reputation. He has his whole life that he grew up with this name and then was found and cultivated and given a Sith name and all of these different things.
How old is he?
Old AF. It's not super clear in the book. The species that he is called Mun or Moon, Mun. It's pretty heavily inferred that they have a longer lifespan than humans. They're definitely not immortal. I don't know if there are any like real immortal species in the Star Wars universe, but he's old. And yeah, I don't want to get too much into it because I actually want to review this book later on. He's old.
Okay, great. And he's got like a squid face.
No.
I feel like in the show,
squid face.
Oh, okay.
He's got.
He looks like a regular face there, but I feel like in the show when it revealed him, he had like some kind of like alien crazy face.
Oh, that's an alien crazy face. It's just, hang on, let me show you. Let me look this up. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yep.
So this is him.
Oh,
not
okay.
actually him. But this is his species.
Right. Okay. I feel like I must have misremembered his like brief cameo in The Acolyte to have a crazier looking face.
I mean, we barely see it, and it's very. Wow, he's above Darth Sidious.
Wow.
Google searching. Let's see. So this is the cover of the book that I'm more familiar with. But when I tried to order it, it was absurdly expensive for some ass reason. Here, you don't even really see his mouth, so it would stand to reason you could kind of just mentally fill in the gaps of a squid mouth.
I did. I totally inferred that there were like squid tentacles coming out of his nose or something. I don't know what I was thinking.
Like this.
Yeah.
This is.
Oh,
this
yeah.
is good.
Kind of looks like an evil Muppet from the Dark Crystal in a way.
Yeah, but he's very tall, very long-limbed. It's he's real cool.
Right on.
Super fucking cool.
Okay.
So yeah, definitely a pretty direct through line from Acolyte to Anakin. We don't know exactly how they're going to get there. I hope they borrow heavily from the Darth Plagueis book because it's so interesting.
Wait, so have we talked about here? I know we were texting about it, but have we talked about how Anakin came into the world?
Not really.
Should we talk about it?
Yeah. We did talk about. We talked about it on the phone, and then I forgot to bring it up. But that was the whole crux of what I wanted to talk about. And then, of course, I just went in a million different directions.
Well, the thing is, once you talk about it on the phone, you're like, "Cool, we covered that." But I didn't remember from the series that that Anakin was in the Phantom Menace. They talk about him as like an immaculate conception, or at least his mom is like, "No, there was no father." Which
there
I
was
feel
no
like,
father.
Just like Mary, right? Like, do people believe that, or they're like, you just don't want to tell us who the father was?
Yeah, and I don't think I was 12 when it came out, so I didn't really think too much about it. I do remember seeing it a little later, like as a teenager, and thinking, well, she has no reason to lie. I mean, she's already. What else could happen to her that's worse than being a slave? I don't know what the taboos are about having children out of wedlock. It's, if you're a slave, I don't think anyone really gives a shit about you.
Right. You don't have status you could lose. You're already low status.
Yeah,
you have.
Exactly.
And you wonder why, so if what the Acolyte infers is, okay, so the Phantom Menace is correct. That's canon. He was born of the Force somehow. We don't know how. We'll explain that in 20 years. We'll figure it out. And so if the Acolyte is setting up, okay, so this is how it works in the universe. It is crazy. It's rare. We didn't think that somebody could manifest this. until these witches showed us otherwise. And now the Jedi are like, oh my God, you can do that. And potentially Darth Plagueis as well is like, oh my God, yes, I can do that. Now I have to figure out how I can do it, not just these witches. And so if he learns how to do it, then why does he pick her? And, you know, it's all part of his plan, I guess. But by the time that Anakin grows up, Plagueis is dead, or is just he's around it for the conception, I guess. But like, when does Plagueis die? I mean, I have a lot of questions, is what I'm saying.
Again, all of this at this point is legend, so it doesn't really like count. But in the book, he dies shortly after the events of the Phantom Menace.
So he's still alive during the Phantom Menace.
Yes.
I mean, according to the non-canon book.
According to the non-canon book, yeah. I do think it's exciting that because he exists so fleetingly in canon, I mean, it's really just his appearance in the cave and Sidious talking about him at the opera, and that's kind of it. So there's a lot of places they could take this. And in the... I don't want to get too much into how it happens, but it is clear in the book that he did not on purpose create Anakin.
Oh, interesting. Like he was monkeying about and it was like, oh shit. Uh-oh.
Well, no, it wasn't an accident either. He didn't have any hand in creating Anakin.
Really?
Well,
you don't have to get into it. You can save it for the review episode. That's fine. We can do that.
I mean, okay. Well, he and Sidious are trying to connect to the dark side in new and different and crazier ways, and they are also trying to like rip. They're trying to manipulate the Force in some pretty wild ways, and they like go to a planet and they meditate and they have this connection that occurs that's really like it's like a rip in the Force. It's so tremendous that Plagueis thinks, oh my gosh, the Jedi on Coruscant must have felt that. It's such a monumental dark side event. And it just so happens that it took place at the same time of the Immaculate Conception of Anakin. So the thought that Plagueis has is that is the Force balancing itself out. We did this monumental dark side thing, so the light side immediately balanced by conceiving Anakin. Because what we did was so unbelievably monumental that this equally unbelievably monumental thing happened on the other side. So in his mind, Anakin needs to be eliminated. Sidious sees a larger picture and sees how he can ultimately be turned to the dark side, and the rest is history. But I'm interested to know what they end up doing in canon. Do they make him actively responsible for Anakin? Is Anakin truly spontaneously conceived? Are they going to go with it was a light side reaction to a dark side action? So he was indirectly responsible.
Right.
But in what we've seen in Acolyte, he's now aware that life can be created via the Force. So I think he's going to have a more direct hand in Anakin's coming to be.
So what we know about him canonically is that he is aware of a set of twins who are the product of a virgin's conception, and that we know that's what we know from the Acolyte, and that we know that that's possible, and then we know from what Sidious says in which movie does he
Revenge
say?
of the Sith.
Revenge of the Sith. We know that in Revenge of the Sith, that Sidious says that Plagueis the Wise was obsessed with prolonging life and helping people not die, and was like really good at that kind of stuff. So those are the things we know. So it feels like it's setting something up that might be a little bit, different from the Legends version. Because it looks like it's giving him a path. Maybe. I don't know. I mean, it's cool to conceive that that's the direction they're going. I also love that. So Darth Maul Palpatine wasn't a Sith in The Phantom Menace. He was just a guy who was bad, who was kind of malevolent.
Oh,
and
no,
use
he
the
was a
Force.
Sith.
Well, then there were 3 Sith.
So, but here's the thing. Plagueis wanted to end the rule of 2. He wanted to become the immortal leader of the Sith and like have a bunch of Sith beneath him. I also don't think that he knew that Palpatine granted Maul the title of Darth. Yet.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, well, hopefully some of these questions will be answered and more, I suppose.
Hopefully some of these questions will be answered in more detail. I'm very curious to know. It's one of the more, like the clones, it's one of the more, to me, interesting subplots and through lines that could be. So I guess we're into genetics in Star Wars. It's like cloning or the artificial creation of life.
I mean, you know, it makes sense that a story, a set of stories within a universe, ultimately get to the questions that we wonder about, which are like, what is life? You know, where does it come from? What are we here for? What is our job now that we're here? Which I feel like is the underpinning of a lot of really good stories. And Star Wars began as, you know, the hero's journey and all that stuff, which are the big questions, but also like it also involves the politics, you know, like the real politics of like, how does that manifest, you know, structurally, organizationally, like all these deeper impulses that drive us, all these giant cosmic questions. How does that look in the form of a bureaucracy?
We'll find out.
Oh my God. Yeah. Okay, Disney, if you're listening, green light, just announce the green light. We're ready.
Yeah, we're ready. I mean, Nick and I have talked about this at length on different parts of the podcast, but that there's too much time between seasons of things now. It used to be just a year. And now everything is like at a minimum 2 years. House of Dragons, Rings of Power being two of the more like mainstream recent ones.
Part of that was because of the strike. You know, part of that is contemporary and won't always be the rule because they lost basically a full year to the strikes.
True. But even some of the other stuff, it's like a second season isn't greenlit until the entire first season has aired.
Yeah, sometimes.
And that's not the way it used to be. It used to be like there was a pilot and you would order 7 seasons from, or however many seasons, just from a single episode. And now it's like, well, no, we need to see how the public reacts to the entire season. And then maybe we'll give you one more season. And it doesn't really allow people to tell long form stories that maybe take multiple seasons worth of arcs to resolve, which is something that I miss.
Yeah. It's harder to plant seeds. I mean, you know, in a way, Disney can afford to be a little Sith-like in this way. Like they can have the long view and they can be like, well, listen, we're an empire now. And we any individual project is expendable, right? Because the larger we can pick up we can start a thread here and we can pick it back up years or decades later in some other project in some other series, and people will still be like, oh my God, that thing from that movie that came out literally 20 years ago, they're coming back to it now. That's so cool. So they didn't need to make a 4th, you know, prequel movie right then. They could just go on to some other stuff and then come back because Disney has an empire view of things.
You're very right.
Whoa.
It's a little scary.
Whoa. I just realized that. That's weird.
I don't know.
I mean, you know, long-term planning is great. And again, it's like, what's your intention with how you're using this power?
It's funny. At work, long view is something that one of my colleagues and I repeat over and over and over in the context of the job. Like long view. Yes, this XYZ is hard now, but we're planning like IPO, baby.
Yep.
So it's yeah. I don't want to think of myself as a Sith Lord, but I mean, after watching Acolyte, I don't know if I want to think of myself as a Jedi either.
Well, again, it's all what the intention is, right?
Yes.
Plans look one way through one lens and a totally different way through another lens.
Yeah. Oh, and that's also, I mean, like I said, I think the future of the Jedi Order has more promise with a more permissive set of rules. And Ahsoka plays into that too, because she, by the end of the Clone Wars, has left the Jedi Order, and she's a little more gray area. There's no like gray Force user really, but she's a little more understanding of like, to defeat your enemy, you have to know your enemy, and that means like learning their teachings and understanding their motivations and things that traditional Jedi would find really repellent. Mm-hmm. So, but she never slides fully into darkness, and you'll like Rebels. Ezra's very special. I think I feel like the most kinship
with Ezra,
with him. Mm-hmm.
Well, you've got the tattoo of Rex, so
I do.
Just saying.
I don't see myself in Rex though. I love Rex. I see myself in Ezra. I relate to Ezra.
You don't need the tattoo. You are the tattoo.
Yes, exactly. Also, I mean, like you've pointed out, and I agree, I'm not crazy about the animation style of
God, I'm going to have to get over it. Their faces are rough.
You have to get,
I don't love the faces. They're so rough, but I'll try.
They are really rough.
For you, I'll give it a shot.
Yeah, you will like it. And you'll meet some interesting, one in particular, an interesting character who is a creature that's kind of a manifestation of the Force, but he's the one in the middle. He's neither light nor dark. He is the Bendu. That's what he is called. It's voiced by Tom Baker. It's very great.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yes.
Bringing the big guns in.
I am the one in the middle, the Bendu.
Okay. I also saw that they brought in Ian McDermott for the voice of the Emperor in
They did.
Bad Batch. That was awesome.
Yeah.
That was a move.
That was definitely a move.
Yeah.
Bad Batch was something special.
This is great. I loved it.
Yeah. I loved it too. I'm so glad you finished it.
I wonder who's going to play Omega in the live action, because I'm sure it's coming. You don't build a character who's like a cool, blonde, young, vibrant, potential Force using rebel without planning a live action introduction.
Yeah, or I mean, they definitely left it open for one. But what I would love to see is a live action, like Rebel pilots show.
Yeah,
like with her and Sabine, who you'll meet in Rebels, and then Wedge, who was a Imperial cadet who defected to the rebellion, and all the different X-wing fighter pilots, because that's what she, ends up doing. I would love to see a pilot show like during the rebellion. That would be super cool.
Also, I noticed that Keisha Castle Hughes is the voice of the clone doctor in the Bad Batch. And if I'm not mistaken, I didn't look this up, but I was like, that name is so familiar. I think that's the girl from Whale Rider. I think she's Maori.
Keisha Castle Hughes, yes. Known for her role in Whale Rider and Obara Sand in Game of Thrones.
Oh, damn. I don't even think I put that together. Cool.
Yeah. She might be too old at this point, but she's
too old for the role, but she was, I mean, I was awesome that they brought her in for that voice. I thought that was a cool touch.
Yeah, that's very cool. She would be a great pick for a live action Omega, but I think she's aged out of that, unfortunately. Oh, I mean, it depends on where in the timeline they do it. They could do it post Battle of Endor. They could do her as a older adult and not a 18-year-old.
They probably want to do the young, cool version. The Star Wars needs its young, cool, it needs its Luke, it needs its Rey, it needs its whatever. You got to have that person.
Yeah, that's a good point. I loved seeing old Hunter.
Yeah.
I got a little teary-eyed.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
It was very beautiful. Well, I think we covered all the things I wanted to cover. We got
Phew.
Anakin's Immaculate Conception.
Eventually got there, yeah.
Eventually, just right before the end, we talked about the twins being immaculately conceived through the Force. We have no idea how she did it. We've got a bunch of questions that we have not answered about Darth Plagueis. Anything else? I think that's it.
No, we left more questions than answers. That's the sign of a successful podcast.
Yeah, that was kind of the point, honestly, because I don't know. Anyone who says anything definitively is probably wrong.
Yeah. I talked myself into more interest. I can't believe how many more hours of these shows I have watched because of our conversations, and I feel like I just talked myself into many more.
Yeah. Well, and there's more clone goodness to come in Rebels.
That's what I hear. That's what I hear.
Yep. So you've got more excitement to come. Well, thank you for being my first ever repeat guest, and definitely not the last of my repeat guests. I'm sure we'll find when Acolyte season 2, there's definitely going to be a season 2. They set up OSHA. They're going to go off and train together. Venestra is enlisting May to help find her former Padawan. Yeah, there's got to be.
Yeah, too much good stuff. Too much good stuff. Let it go.
Too much good stuff. What is that the logo of the slogan for?
I don't know. Oreos?
AM PM.
Oh. Wow.
Too much good stuff. Not relevant. Gonna cut that. All right, my dear. Thank you for joining and talking all things Acolyte through Sidious and Vader.
All right. Well, we'll come back in another 20 years and see if we were right.
Exactly. Mwah.
Mwah. See ya.
Bye. If you have any questions or comments about the Acolyte, Anakin's Immaculate Conception, or Star Wars in general, send them in to teatimeontatooine@gmail.com or shoot me a message on Instagram. Also, make sure to check out Brian's podcast, Local Selection, Making Local Politics Sexy, wherever you listen to podcasts. It's a good one, especially interesting during an election year. Setting aside Legends for a minute and just focusing on the future canon storyline, do you think Plagueis will have a hand in the creation of the Chosen One on purpose, by accident, or not at all? I'll put polls up on Instagram and Spotify if you'd like to weigh in. I gotta tell you, whichever way it goes, I'm really excited to find out. That wraps up our show for today. This episode was edited by me and Sam Kiefer, with additional editing by Nick Griffith. All show artwork is by Krishna Shetty, with thanks to Sam for producing. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and tune in a couple of weeks for episode 12. You can find me at Teatime on Tatooine on Instagram. I'm Anna Trumbo, and remember, the Force will be with you, always.